everyone, it's Shannon here for Honeybee Stamps. In today's video, we are going to create a fall bouquet with the Farm Fresh Flowers stamp set. We're also going to create a very simple background using the Bufflo Plaid Stamp Set as well. I'm going to start with the Farm Fresh Flowers stamp set. I'm going to grab that image of the flowers as well as that beautiful watering can. I'm going to stamp them onto Bristol smooth paper today. That's because I'm going to do some very simple watercoloring with Tombow dual brush pens, and the Bristol paper is very smooth and will allow that ink to really glide over the surface. Because I'm doing some watercoloring, I'm going to use a waterproof ink, so I've chosen Versafine Onyx black ink, and I just went ahead and stamped my two images onto my Bristol paper. Now I'm going to stamp this little label or imprint for the watering can. I'm also going to stamp it in Versafine Onyx black ink and then just stamp it right there. Now I'm ready to move on to my watercoloring. So like I mentioned earlier, I am going to use Tombow dual brush pens to do my coloring today. I'm going to start with my marker direct to paper and just color in the dark areas, anywhere I think it's going to be dark. So on these tulips, I'm thinking at the base of the tulip and kind of in the inner part of the tulip. Then I'll take my brush, get a little bit of water, and with that damp brush, I will kind of go over those inked up areas, and that will activate the ink and it'll start to move, and I can glide that ink over the surface to create a gradation. Now that I've finished with my lighter shade, I'm going to go to a darker, kind of this really tangerine orange, again going at kind of the darker area, so at the base of the petal and then inside the flower, and then I will blend out once more with my damp brush. And this blending is really easy to do, and you need very little water. It doesn't take much water to get that ink kind of gliding over the surface. I went ahead and finished the other tulip off camera, and now I'm going to move on to this flower here. I started with a really bright yellow, and I'm coloring kind of the base of the petals again, and any petal that is kind of behind other petals. In my thinking, that petal would be a little bit darker, so I'm coloring that more with my yellow. After I've got that yellow down, I then am again taking my damp brush here and blending that out to create a soft gradation. Now that I've finished with that yellow, I'm going to move on to a brown and just color that center of the flower with that and blend that out with a damp brush. And now moving on to my second shade for this flower. So all my flowers today, I'm going to do two shades. I think the two shades add a lot of depth to the image, so I'm going to probably do that more on. Even though it's an extra step, I do think it adds a lot to the flowers, really adds a richness. So I grabbed a darker yellow here, almost an orange, and colored once more all the darker areas and then blended that out. I'm now moving on to this other flower here. I kind of have a purple picked out. I am again coloring at the base of the at the petal, so kind of where the petal meets the center of the flower. Once I have that color down, I am then again going to take my damp brush and kind of blend it out. And as soon as I'm done creating those gradations on the petals, I'm then going to move to my center of my flower. I have two browns picked out for that. Kind of start with the lighter in the center and then darker on the outer edge, and then blended them with a damp brush. Now I'm moving on to my second color for my petals. This is a little bit more of a maroonier purple and definitely a little bit darker. And once more, I do think this adds a lot of depth to the flower. It was kind of flat, and that darker shade really did help. I'm now moving on to this flower here. This one has lots of little flowers, and I felt like the easiest way was to first just kind of get some purple down, then blend it out, and then I moved to a darker purple, added a little shadow to the bottom of each little petal, and now I'm blending it out with a liner brush, and this just softens that a little bit. Now I'm going to move on to these berries. Started with a red and then blended them out. Very similar to how I handled the purple flower, but the berries are a little bit bigger than the petals. And then I'm moving on to my darker shade just to add a little shadow. I'm now moving on to the leaves. I'm going to start with this leaf for the tulip. Kind of have a really light sage color picked out, just colored kind of the base and then blended out. For my other leaf color, I have much more of a blue-green, again coloring darker at the base of the leaf and then blending out with the damp brush. And then my final green is this more of a forest, well actually more of an olive green, and I colored that for the berries and that little leaf patch in the back. Now I'm going to move on to my watering can. I have a gray picked out, N55. I'm going to color the sides, the inside of the watering can, and then just blend out with my damp brush. And I was actually surprised how easy this was to do. I was a little intimidated by coloring this watering can, but I was really surprised how well that turned out, and it was so easy to do. Since I am all done with my watercoloring, I went ahead and die cut these images out with the matching dies, and now I'm going to move on to my background. I have the beautiful Buffalo Plaid Stamp Set here and a big piece of scratch paper. This is 6 by 8.5, so it needs to be bigger, much bigger than your A2 panel, and we're going to create a guide on this. So I just quickly inked up the Buffalo Plaid Stamp Set and stamped it on to that scratch paper, and I'm going to use that impression to help me figure out where I need to place my A2 panel. I want my A2 panel to be stamped at the open edge of the pattern, so I just put a little bit of tape on the back side of this panel of pumpkin cardstock, centered it where I want it to go, in between that open edge again, and then I'm ready to ink up my stamp and stamp my panel. So this just allows me to really get the exact position of that Buffalo Plaid onto an A2 panel. So I'm now going to move on to kind of creating some dimension or adding some height to my die cuts. I went ahead and stacked up 2 die cuts of the watering can just with liquid glue. That's going to add a little bit of height to that watering can. And for the flowers, I'm just going to use some foam tape. So the foam tape is a little bit higher than the 2 stacked pieces of cardstock, so it'll allow those flowers to fit right over the watering can. I'm now going to move on to a die cut. This is the Friend Honey Cuts die. I went ahead and die cut it out of black cardstock twice completely, and I'm now adhering one of the black cardstock friends on to a vellum die cut, which was also cut with a die from the Friend Honey Cuts die set. Now I'm adhering the second friend to the back side of the vellum. That will add a little bit of dimension to that friend, so the vellum will be lifted up a little bit and be a little bit more cloudier and a little bit more opaque. For the last 3 die cuts, they're just the ND from Friend, and I stacked all 3 of them up one on top of the other. This is going to provide a little bit of dimension, so this Friend die cut, or this Friend word, will be able to sit flush on that raised watering can, because remember that watering can, we added 2 layers of cardstock underneath it, so we need 3 layers on the tail end of Friend to kind of rest on top of it. So I went ahead and arranged my images so I could figure out where I needed to stamp this Miss You. This is from the Friend stamp set, and I just stamped it in Versafine Onyx black ink, and I'm going to finish the card by adhering my front panel onto the front of an A2 top folding craft card base. Then I will adhere my watering can with liquid glue. Then I will remove the backing on the foam tape and stick down my flowers. And then all I have left to do here is just add a little bit of liquid glue to the back side of my Friend die cut and adhere it right down onto my card front. I'll now hold my card up to the camera so you can get a good look at some of the details in this card. I love these beautiful flowers from the Farm Fresh Flower Stamp Set. Love how you can just change the color palette and then you have a fall arrangement. And I paired it with a really rich background created with the Buffalo Plaid Stamp Set. I hope you guys enjoyed today's card and video. If you'd like any more information on the products I use, please head over to Honeybee. And thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.